in general. And so maybe in the case when you have an exodus from cities, when people want to leave metropolitan areas, they don't have anything else to go to, so they're kind of stuck.
Hmm.
And then jumping off of that, the reason why I brought that up, the emergence of like different issues around technology and technology and the laws and whatnot, is so China. If anything, if the biggest lesson, if there's any one big lesson we can take from like the last decade amongst anything, is that the U.S. is no longer the bully in the playground that it used to be. It doesn't,
Hmm.
there's plenty of other countries and nations and leaders who are showing that they can, tackle different causes sometimes more effectively and more efficiently. One of the
Hmm.
things that China was doing, I don't know if it was just last year or 2019, is they sent up some plants, some seeds, whatnot, on a satellite, and I don't know if it was just orbiting around the Earth, around the Moon, or something like that. But it
Yep.
was the first successful attempt at growing seeds off of, I forget the exact term, but not growing seeds on the Earth and
Right.
whatnot. So it kind of actually is a sign that one of the other emerging technologies is going to be growing foods and whatnot in outer space, or colonizing other planets and whatnot, other terrestrial bodies, for the
Hmm.
sake of providing the foods for the growing population without having to make that trade off of using up the topsoil on the earth,
Yep.
which I think is really amazing. And of course, it's like obviously we're talking about geopolitical relations and different cultural instincts and whatnot, but just focusing on the science of the technology and whatnot, and the implications that it has for a country like China to be making such bold steps and developments, while other similar nations that are equally industrialized or have the same capabilities seem to be struggling with more lower concerns, or they're hemorrhaging their efforts, like you said, with getting so much caught up in this the green revolution and organic foods,
Hmm.
when you can't embrace the fact that, oh, this is hurting our food yields. And so then you have to focus on other things beyond research and development and keeping up with other competitors.
Right. No, absolutely. And you hit a perfect point right there. And that's actually where I was wanting to go next too, was the potential of growing food outside of Earth. And so that was something I've actually covered that in a couple episodes before. I did an episode on The Martian, the movie The Martian, and we talked about the potential of actually being able to grow food on Mars. And then I did another episode with somebody who actually worked on one of NASA's projects to be able to grow crops on the moon. And so that was really cool. We talked about that quite a bit. I think that we're going to start seeing stuff like that happen more and more often. I mean, we already talked about the lab grown meat being a new technology that's going to start taking wave. I think that it will. I don't think it'll be. I don't think the lab grown meat will ever perfectly replace our conventional meat. I think that that's just something that's not going to happen. If it does, it's not going to be for a long time, just because of it's going to be a while before we're going to be able to mass produce it to the scale we're going to need to, and people also aren't going to trust it for a while. I feel like. Um, so that's one I'm not super worried about taking over. And even if it does, I really don't care. I mean, like I'm a diehard fan of classic beef. I was raised around beef and dairy farms my whole life, so it's like cattle are kind of my bread and butter. I literally this morning walked over to my school's beef ranch and hung out with the cows all day just because that's where my happy place is. I just love cattle, but like if it comes to the point where we have less cattle just because we can't have the land to feed them, and we have lab grown meat as a like a supplement to our meat supply, I think that's fine. One of the things that I'll get into like the growing food outside of the planet thing in a second, but one of the things that's kind of a concern in the agricultural community right now is if we go into like lab grown meat and vertical farming and hydroponics and some of those other newer methods of growing food, that there's going to be less jobs for people because agriculture employs so many people. They're going to lose, we're going to lose jobs as those kinds of methods start to show up. And my argument to that is always that there were less jobs for people whenever we invented the tractor. There were less jobs for people whenever we invented drones. There's like everything that we have ever done in terms of technological advancement took up jobs, but guess what? Invented more jobs. It just requires us as a society to evolve technologically and educationally. It just requires our workforce to get smarter and figure out new ways to do things, which we've been doing forever. I mean, the first time that they invented the tractor, the guy who used to push the plow, I guarantee he wasn't too happy about it. But as soon as he figured out how to drive a tractor, it probably made his life a whole lot easier. Like there's things that are going to take place of our traditional jobs, but they're going to create an evolution in the job market. It's not going to get rid of jobs, it's just going to create different jobs. And so that's something that I always provide as a counter argument to, people always say, like, well, if we create lab grown meat, that's just going to get rid of meat farmers. It's like, no, they're going to have to adapt, which they are very, very keen to. Farmers, if anything, are excellent at adapting to their environment. That's exactly what their job is just adapting to everything that's being thrown at them all the time, because it's a lot.
Yeah,
um,
it's ever evolving. And in a
right.
smaller case, a more consumer, small business case is that you think of like grocery stores, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we're just surpassed a year of the COVID-19 pandemic in the United States, and the impact we've seen on like restaurants and grocery stores, reporting a loss of revenue for not being able to serve customers indoors. But one of the things that's come about is that they say, oh, we can hire drivers, we can hire people to interface with different, elements with the consumers and with our vendors and whatnot. You have to adapt. And no, it's not always going to be a one-to-one, like, oh, you lose 20 jobs and you're able to replace exactly 20 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's when other conversations about, okay, well, then how do we revolutionize other areas of our society to help spur, further growth, instead of just saying that, instead of just holding on to these old way of doing things just for the sake of, being stuck in our ways. And that's something that again has to happen, as you said, it has to be a push by education, getting people, the consumers, up to speed on this stuff. It has to be an effort by the governments in trying to streamline this and give people the resources and a consistent a framework to work with. And then you also need corporations that are willing to play ball. You know?
I'm looking at one number, so I want to make sure I get it right. But yeah, if you have more you want to add to that, then go right ahead. I just want to double check this.
No, that's it. I guess one other tangent to go off of that is one of the things that Andrew Yang helped to really popularize during his run in the Democratic primary, and that was brought up by other figures, which is, damn it, why did it slip out now? But is that you get a certain amount of guaranteed income. Um, what's the name? It's gotten super popular. But anyway, I'm sure that everybody who listens to this will be like, oh, he's talking about that. But that you give people that make up to a certain wage or a certain salary normally, and say, hey, we're just going to give you a supplemental $500 or $1,000. You'll be able to spend it on whatever, but it's something that you can, hopefully put towards the things which you need in life. And that is to help offset the fact that different technologies, naturally are going to disrupt certain jobs and careers. And, it may take 6 months or a year or a couple other years for new jobs to materialize and replace the ones that were lost.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that that's another important factor, people to consider when they want to talk about, this is going to get rid of jobs and whatnot. But it also creates other opportunities, opens up other conversations, and allows us to try out different things.
Yeah.
We don't have to be stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't find the number I was looking for because I can't remember what the article was now. I'm going to have to see if I can go back and find it later. But I vaguely remember when I was doing my speeches back in high school, which was 4 years ago, that there were about 70 million, I want to say. It was either 70 million or 70 billion. I think it was 70 million. Yeah, that sounds about right because there's not 70 billion people in the world. There are 70 million jobs available in the United States just for agriculture alone. And so whenever people want to say, like, agricultural evolution is going to take away jobs, it's like, we have a ton of jobs that nobody is taking. We need to evolve. There's this concern that, mechanized agriculture, or automated agriculture, which is the newest revolution of agriculture, automated like milkers, and like we have robots that'll actually check on cows for us, and we have drones that can do flyovers, and we have machines that can hand pick fruit for us now, and all that kind of stuff. Like, people always complain, like, well, that's going to take away so many jobs from from immigrants and from other low income workers that need a steady job. It's like, well, they weren't taking them before. Like, we invented that because we had no one working there. Like, we need people working there, and nobody's taking the job because agricultural jobs aren't really pushed anymore. Like, high school dropouts, or people who go to college that don't know what they want to do. There's tons of career opportunities in agriculture that nobody looks at. And not going to say that milking cows all day is a glorious life, because it's definitely not. But if it'll get you through college, it'll get you through college. Or if it'll keep you busy until you can find something better, then do that. Like, there's so many opportunities available, and not just in agricultural, like, food production, but actually, like, in the sciences, in computer development, in technology, in law. Like, there's so many different jobs available in agriculture that aren't being occupied. It's no wonder we're having to evolve technologically, and especially because we have a lot of people to feed and not a lot of resources to do it. And so like to your point, as technology evolves, we're going to see changes in the job market that aren't necessarily a bad thing. And this kind of ties back to the whole lab grown meat thing that I was talking about, and like vertical farming, and like these are all like newer methods of agriculture that we're trying to see if they work before it's too late. Like people are saying, like, why do we have to try GMOs? Because we don't need more food right now. We're already wasting all this food, like we talked about. Why should we be growing more than we need? It's like, because if we don't test it now and we test it when we need to and it doesn't work, we're screwed. We need to figure this out right now. And like I think as you explain that to people, they start to understand it, but that's not something that's necessarily common sense for most people. Which I mean, I'm not going to blame them for not knowing that, because who thinks about food all day besides me? But it's it's just something that you have to keep in mind. And I kind of I've talked to some people who are from agricultural sectors that don't really understand. I've talked to people who are even more right wing that typically agree with me on some of this kind of stuff. They're just like, that's why are you worried about that kind of stuff? It's like, because if we don't worry about it now, it's going to be a big issue in the future. Like everyone needs to be worrying about this right now. And so I think that the technological advancements that we're making with being able to grow food on other planets and other on the moon, or in the solar system, like however we develop new agricultural production methods, it's going to be a good thing. It may not be the new thing, but it's going to be beneficial no matter what, because it's going to give us more. Like I'm all for technological advancement as long as it means we're going to continue to live a little bit longer. Like I don't think we're ever going to completely replace agriculture until Earth dies, because that's just how our planet works. But if we have to expand it to other planets, or if we have to produce more methods to grow that kind of stuff, or if we have to find alternatives to be able to handle all the regulations and the urban sprawl, I'm fine with that, because that means that we get to keep living a little bit longer. We get to have food for a few more decades, hopefully, or a few more centuries before we finally blow up.